Sandra David woke up to the metallic taste of blood in her mouth and the distant sound of traffic humming through cracked windows. Her wrists burned, and when she tried to move, cold steel bit into her skin. Handcuffs. Her eyes snapped open, searching the dimness for answers, for threats, for escape routes. The room smelled of antiseptic and rust, a strange combination that made her stomach turn. Medical equipment beeped softly beside her, and 4 drip connected to her arm. She was lying on what looked like a hospital gurney, but this was no hospital. The walls were bare concrete, water-stained and crumbling. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly in the draft from a broken window. Then she saw him. Ming Chung stood at a metal table across the room, his back to her, shoulders tense beneath a black t-shirt as he worked with surgical precision over something she couldn't see. His dark hair was longer than in the surveillance photos, falling into his eyes as he moved. The most wanted cyber-terrorist in 3 continents, the ghost who'd evaded Interpol for 2 years, the hacker who'd brought down corporations and exposed government secrets with nothing but code and audacity. And he was here, in this abandoned clinic in the heart of Lagos, with her chained to a bed. Sandra's breath came faster. She pulled against the handcuffs, testing their strength, and the movement sent fire shooting through her left side. She gasped, the sound escaping before she could stop it, and Ming turned. His face was exactly as she remembered from their encounter in Singapore 6 months ago. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything in seconds, a mouth that rarely smiled. He was younger than she'd expected when she first saw him, maybe 32, with the kind of controlled stillness that came from living in constant danger. But there was something else in his expression now, something she couldn't read. "You're awake," he said, his accent a subtle blend of Korean and something else, British maybe, from years of moving between countries. "Don't move too much. I spent 4 hours stitching that knife wound. I'd prefer not to redo my work." Sandra's hand went instinctively to her side, found thick bandages beneath her torn shirt. The memories came rushing back then, fragmented and sharp. The tech facility. The trap. Jackson's voice over the comms, cold and final. The servers overheating, smoke filling her lungs. She'd been stabbed by the automated security system, bleeding out on the floor when... "You," she breathed, staring at him. "You pulled me out." Ming moved closer, carrying a glass of water and 2 pills. "Painkillers. You'll need them. The wound was deep, but I got it cleaned and closed. No major organs hit, but you lost a lot of blood." He held out the glass, and when she didn't take it, he set it on the metal tray beside the gurney. "I'm not going to poison you, Agent David. If I wanted you dead, I would have left you in that fire. Why didn't you?" Her voice came out rough, throat raw from smoke inhalation. "I've spent 2 years hunting you. I was 3 days from finally having enough evidence to bring you in, and you know it." Something flickered across his face, too quick to catch. "Your team left you to die," he said simply. "I watched them seal that room with you inside. Watched your partner, Jackson, override the fire suppression system to make sure the blaze would spread. They wanted you dead, Agent David. The question you should be asking is why." Sandra's stomach dropped. She wanted to call him a liar, wanted to insist this was some elaborate manipulation, but the words wouldn't come. Because she knew. God help her, she knew exactly why. "The ghost files," she whispered. Ming's expression confirmed it. "You found them yesterday. Ran searches on your secure terminal at 0300 hours. You were careful, used encrypted queries, covered your tracks. But someone was watching. Someone always is." He pulled up a chair, straddled it backwards, arms resting on the back as he studied her. "Your agency has been running illegal surveillance on African governments for 5 years. Selling state secrets to the highest bidder. Manipulating elections. Facilitating coups. All of it hidden in those files. You weren't supposed to find them. So they decided to eliminate me." The words tasted like ash. Sandra closed her eyes, saw Jackson's face in her mind. They'd been partners for 3 years. She'd been to his wedding, held his daughter, trusted him with her life on a dozen operations. And he'd locked her in that room without hesitation. "Your death is already on the news," Ming continued, and there was something almost gentle in his tone now. "Rogue agent, stole classified information, died in a raid gone wrong. Very tragic. Your funeral is scheduled for Saturday. I'm told the director himself will give the eulogy." Sandra laughed, a broken sound that hurt her chest. "How considerate. Drink the water," Ming said. "You're dehydrated. And we need to talk about what happens next." She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some shred of dignity or control, but her throat was screaming for moisture and her body was screaming louder. She took the glass with shaking hands, drank deeply, the cool water like salvation. Ming watched without expression, waiting until she drained it before speaking again. "Here's our situation," he said. "You're officially dead. Your agency thinks they've cleaned up their problem. But you're not dead, which means you're a loose end. If they discover you survived, they'll send everyone to finish the job. You can't go to the authorities because your agency is the authorities. You can't access your accounts, contact your family, return to your life. You're a ghost now, Agent David. Welcome to my world." The reality of it settled over her like a burial shroud. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built, gone in a single night of betrayal. Her mother would be planning her funeral. Her sister's daughter, the niece she'd promised to protect, would grow up thinking Sandra had died a traitor. The weight of it pressed against her chest, made breathing difficult. "Why save me?" she asked again, needing to understand. "You could have let me die. It would have been easier for you. One less agent hunting you." Ming was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "Singapore," he finally said. 6 months ago. You had me cornered in that server room. Could have shot me, claimed self-defense. Instead, you arrested me properly. Read me my rights. Made sure I wasn't harmed in custody." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Do you know how rare that is? An agent who still plays by the rules, even when no one's watching." Sandra remembered that night. Ming had been trapped, surrounded, no way out. Her finger had been on the trigger, and God, she'd wanted to pull it. This man had exposed secrets that got people killed, had torn apart institutions, had caused chaos across continents. But she'd lowered her weapon. Because that was the job. That was justice. "You escaped custody 48 hours later," she pointed out. "Terrible security," Ming said with a shrug. "Not my fault they underestimated me. But my point stands. You're the only agent I've encountered in 5 years who still believes the system should work properly. When I saw your team leave you to die last night, when I realized they'd rather murder you than let you expose their corruption, I thought." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "I thought perhaps you deserved to know what it feels like to be betrayed by everything you believed in." "Misery loves company?" Sandra's voice was sharp with bitterness. "No, more like righteous anger needs direction." Ming stood, moved to a laptop on the metal table, brought it over. The screen showed news feeds, social media, official statements. Sandra's face stared back from every headline. Decorated agent dies in raid. Heroes sacrifice. The agency mourns. She watched Jackson give an interview, his face appropriately grief-stricken as he talked about losing his partner. Watched Agent Okonkwo, her mentor for 8 years, praise her dedication while standing in front of her official portrait. It was a masterpiece of deception, and she'd been erased from her own story. "They're good at this," Ming said quietly. "Spinning narratives. Burying truth. I've been tracking your agency for 11 months. They're connected to 17 major scandals, for assassinations, and at least 2 civilian massacres. All of it hidden. All of it protected." Sandra looked up at him, this man who'd been her target, her obsession, for 2 years. "What do you want from me?" "I want to burn them down," Ming said simply. "Every corrupt agency, every bought politician, every corporate criminal hiding behind government protection. I've been building a case for months, collecting evidence, connecting threads. But I'm missing the center of the web. The ghost files. The proof that ties everything together. They're on your agency's secure server, air-gapped from the internet. I can't hack what I can't reach." Understanding dawned slowly. "You need someone to physically access them. I need someone who knows that facility inside and out, who knows the security protocols, the shift changes, the blind spots." Ming leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. "I need you, Agent David. Help me get those files. Help me expose every rotten piece of the system that tried to kill you. And in return, I'll help you reclaim your life." Sandra stared at him, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. This was insane. Partnering with Ming Chung was career suicide, except she didn't have a career anymore. It was betraying everything she'd sworn to uphold, except the institution she'd served had betrayed her first. It was dangerous, impossible, likely to get them both killed. But God, she wanted it. Wanted to watch the people who'd murdered her burn. Wanted justice for her sister Amara, whose witness protection had been sold 3 years ago, who died because someone in Sandra's agency had traded her life for profit. Wanted to tear down the lies and expose the truth. Consequences be damned. I need proof, she said finally, that my agency is as corrupt as you claim. Not just the ghost files, but evidence I can verify myself. Ming's smile was sharp, satisfied. I was hoping you'd say that. He moved back to his laptop, pulled up encrypted files, began showing her documentation. Bank transfers, recorded conversations, emails between her superiors and known criminals. It was damning, comprehensive, and sickeningly real. Sandra watched her entire worldview crumble as Ming methodically destroyed every illusion she'd held about the agency she'd devoted her life to. When he finished, she was shaking with rage. How long have you known? About your agency specifically? 11 months. About government corruption in general? Since I was 19. Ming's voice went flat, distant. My father was a journalist in Beijing. He exposed corruption in the provincial government. They disappeared him. When I tried to find him through official channels, I hit walls everywhere. So I taught myself to hack. Broke into sealed records. Found proof he'd been executed, buried in an unmarked grave. The government had erased him like he'd never existed. Sandra heard the echo of her own pain in his words. That's when you became this. That's when I realized the system doesn't protect people. It protects itself. Ming closed the laptop. I started small, exposing local corruption, then regional, then international. Every secret I reveal, every scandal I expose, I tell myself I'm preventing another family from losing someone the way I lost my father. By becoming a criminal yourself. By becoming ungovernable. Ming met her eyes. The law only works when the people enforcing it are honest. When they're not, the law becomes a weapon against the innocent. So yes, I break their laws. I steal their secrets. I tear down their carefully constructed lies. And I don't apologize for it. Sandra thought about Amara. Sweet, brave Amara who'd testified against a trafficking ring and paid for it with her life. Sandra had joined the agency because she believed in justice, believed the system would protect people like her sister. But the system had sold Amara's location for money, had let her die, had buried the truth and moved on. Teach me, Sandra said suddenly. Everything you know. How to access secure systems, how to move through digital spaces undetected, how to fight the way you fight. Ming raised an eyebrow. That's a significant request, Agent David. Sandra. If we're going to be partners, call me Sandra. She pushed herself upright despite the screaming protest of her injury. And I'm not an agent anymore. I'm dead, remember? So teach me how to be a ghost. For the first time, Ming's smile reached his eyes. All right, Sandra. Let's see what you're capable of. What followed were the most intense hours of Sandra's life. Ming was a patient but demanding teacher, walking her through the basics of network infiltration, showing her how to think like a hacker rather than an investigator. It was a complete paradigm shift, moving from following rules to finding ways around them, from working within systems to exploiting their weaknesses. Her head spun with new information, new possibilities, new understanding of how fragile the digital infrastructure she'd trusted really was. You're a natural, Ming said after she successfully bypassed a practice firewall he'd set up. Most people can't make that mental leap from law enforcement to insurgent. But you see the patterns. I've been studying you for 2 years, Sandra pointed out, fingers flying across the keyboard. I know how you think. Apparently not well enough, or you would have caught me. But there was no mockery in his tone, just observation. They worked side by side as afternoon bled into evening, and Sandra became acutely aware of Ming's presence beside her. The way he moved with economical grace. The intensity of his focus when he was deep in code. The rare moments when he'd explain something and his whole face would transform with enthusiasm for the elegance of a particular exploit. He was brilliant in a way she'd never encountered before, his mind operating on levels that left her breathless. Why'd you really save me? She asked during a break, the question she'd been circling all day. Ming was quiet, hands wrapped around a cup of tea he'd made from supplies in the clinic. I told you. Singapore. You showed me that not every agent is corrupt. That's not all of it. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in the air between them. No, he admitted. It's not. The truth is, I've been alone for 5 years. Moving from place to place, trusting no one, always watching my back. And when I saw you in that fire, dying because you tried to do the right thing, I thought. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I thought maybe I didn't have to be alone anymore. Maybe there was someone else who understood what it costs to fight corruption. Someone who'd paid the same price. Sandra's chest tightened. That's a hell of a gamble. I could have woken up and tried to kill you. You could have. But you didn't. Ming's smile was soft, vulnerable in a way she suspected few people ever saw. You asked me to teach you instead. You chose to fight back rather than give up. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are, Sandra David. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Ming's phone buzzed, shattering the spell. He checked it, and his expression went rigid. We have a problem. Sandra was on her feet instantly, ignoring the pull of her stitches. What? Your agency just issued a classified alert. They're initiating Protocol 7. Ming showed her the screen, intercepted communications scrolling past. Do you know what that means? Sandra's blood ran cold. It's a total sweep. They activate it when there's a credible threat to national security. Every asset, every resource, total mobilization. Why would they? Ming's eyes widened. They know you're alive. That's impossible. How could they? The handcuffs. Ming cursed in Korean, already moving. They have RFID trackers embedded in all agency restraints. I should have thought of that. I should have checked. He grabbed a scanner from his equipment, ran it over the handcuffs still locked around Sandra's wrists. The device beeped urgently. Ming pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked the cuffs, examined them closely. There. See that? Transmitter. It's been broadcasting your location for the last 12 hours. Sandra felt sick. They're coming. They're already here. Ming was gathering equipment with practiced speed, stuffing laptops and hard drives into a backpack. We have maybe 10 minutes before this location is swarmed. We need to move. Now. But Sandra was staring at the handcuffs in her hands, at the tiny transmitter embedded in the metal, and a different thought was forming. Or we let them come. Ming froze. That's suicide. No. It's an opportunity. Sandra's mind was racing now, seeing possibilities, seeing a path. They think I'm injured, alone, trapped. They'll send a small team to finish the job quietly. No witnesses. No complications. And we'd be outnumbered, outgunned, with nowhere to run. But we'd have something they don't expect. Element of surprise. And you. Sandra met his eyes. You took down a security team in Singapore with nothing but a laptop and a smoke grenade. Imagine what we could do together. If you're still watching right now, I have to ask, what would you do in Sandra's place? Trust the man you've been hunting for years, or play it safe and run? Drop your answer in the comments before we jump into the next part, because things are about to explode. Ready? Let's get into it. Ming studied her for a long moment, and she could see him running calculations, weighing risks, considering angles. Then slowly he smiled. Not the careful, controlled expression he usually wore, but something wild and dangerous. You're absolutely insane. I think I'm starting to like you, Sandra David. Save the compliments for after we survive. Sandra moved to the window, scanned the street below. How much time do we have? Based on their response protocols, maybe 15 minutes before the team arrives. Less if they're already mobilized. Ming was pulling weapons from hidden compartments in the walls, revealing an arsenal Sandra hadn't known existed. Can you shoot with that injury? I can do whatever I need to do. She took the gun he offered, checked the magazine, the action smooth and automatic despite everything. What's the plan? What followed was the fastest tactical planning session of Sandra's life. Ming had an uncanny ability to read spaces, to see how rooms could become traps, how everyday objects could become weapons. They set up the clinic like a kill box, using medical equipment as obstacles, positioning themselves with overlapping fields of fire, creating false trails and dead ends. It was brutal, efficient, and utterly ruthless. You've done this before, Sandra observed as they worked. More times than I'd like to admit. Being hunted teaches you things. Ming was rigging a laptop to a projector, setting up what looked like a holographic display. I've been chased by intelligence agencies on 4 continents. You learn to turn every space into a fortress or you die. Sandra wanted to ask more, wanted to understand how someone became this, but there was no time. Car engines rumbled in the distance, getting closer. Ming's eyes met hers across the room, and something passed between them. Trust. Partnership. The understanding that they were in this together now, for better or worse. Positions, Ming said quietly. Sandra moved to her designated spot behind an overturned gurney, weapon ready, breathing controlled despite her racing heart. Through the cracked window, she saw 3 black SUVs pull up to the building. No markings, no lights. Professional. Careful. Deadly. 6 figures emerged, tactical gear, suppressed weapons. Sandra recognized the lead operative immediately. Marcus Cole, her agency's best cleaner. The man they sent when problems needed to disappear permanently. Her stomach twisted. She'd worked with Marcus on 2 operations. He'd seemed decent, professional. Now he was here to kill her. "They're coming up," Ming whispered from his position. "Remember, wait for my signal." The team moved with military precision, clearing the building floor by floor. Sandra could hear their progress through the structure, the soft calls of clear, as they secured each room. Her finger rested on the trigger, muscles tense, wound throbbing. She pushed the pain away, focused on breathing, on the present moment, on survival. The door to the clinic exploded inward. Flashbang. Sandra squeezed her eyes shut just in time, the concussive blast still rattling her skull. But she'd been ready for it, and the team hadn't expected resistance. She fired blind through the smoke, heard a grunt of pain, kept firing. Beside her, Ming triggered his surprise, the holographic projector activating and flooding the room with disorienting light patterns. The tactical team's night vision goggles would be useless, their sensors confused. Sandra rolled left as return fire shredded the gurney where she'd been hidden. She came up shooting, caught one operative in the leg, dropped behind cover as bullets sparked off metal. The room was chaos, smoke and noise and movement. She'd lost track of Ming, could only trust he was executing his part of the plan. Then the lights died completely. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red. Through the haze, Sandra saw Ming moving like a shadow, taking down operatives with brutal efficiency. He fought like someone who'd learned violence as a survival skill, no wasted motion, no hesitation. A knife flashed. Someone screamed. The sound cut off abruptly. Sandra engaged the operative closest to her, hand-to-hand combat at close quarters. He was bigger, stronger, but she was desperate and injured and had nothing left to lose. She used his momentum against him, drove her elbow into his throat, watched him go down choking. Grabbed his weapon, spun toward the next threat. Marcus. He had Ming pinned against the wall, forearm across his throat, weapon coming up. Sandra didn't think. She fired. The bullet caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him away from Ming. He went down hard, weapon skittering across the floor. The room fell silent except for ragged breathing and the distant wail of sirens. Sandra did a quick count. For operatives down, unconscious or worse. Marcus clutching his shoulder, bleeding but alive. One operative missing, probably fled when things went sideways. Ming pushed himself off the wall, breathing hard, blood on his face from a split lip. "You all right?" Define all right. Sandra's hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. She'd just shot her former colleague. Had just killed at least 2 people, maybe more. The reality of it pressed down on her, made breathing difficult. But Ming was there, his hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Stay with me, Sandra. We're not done yet." Marcus was laughing, a wet sound that bubbled with blood. "You're both dead. You know that, right? The agency won't stop. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "Let them try." Ming crouched beside him, pulled out a phone, started recording. "Tell us about the ghost files. Tell us why you tried to kill Agent David. Go to hell." Ming's smile was cold. "I've been there. It's not so bad once you get used to it. But you, Marcus? You're going somewhere worse. You're going to prison. Unless you cooperate." For the next 10 minutes, Ming extracted a confession that made Sandra's blood run cold. Marcus talked about the surveillance programs, the election manipulation, the assassinations disguised as accidents. He named names, gave dates, provided details. All of it recorded, all of it damning. By the time Ming finished, they had enough evidence to bring down half the agency leadership. "Why?" Sandra asked, staring at Marcus. "You were a good agent. I trusted you." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Good agents don't get rich, Sandra. Good agents die broke and forgotten while the corrupt ones retire to private islands. I made my choice. You made yours. Only difference is, I'm going to survive mine." "No," Ming said quietly. "You're really not." He'd already called an ambulance, already sent the confession to secure servers around the world. By the time Marcus reached the hospital, the evidence would be everywhere. Unstoppable. Uncontainable. The agency would have to respond, and their response would only confirm the accusations. Sandra and Ming were gone before the ambulance arrived, slipping through the Lagos night like the ghosts they'd become. They moved through back alleys and side streets, Ming navigating with the ease of someone who'd memorized every escape route. Sandra's injury was bleeding again, soaking through the bandages, but she kept moving. Adrenaline and determination pushing her forward. They reached a safe house 2 hours later, a modest apartment in a nondescript building. Ming had resources everywhere, she was learning. Places to hide, equipment stashed, contacts who asked no questions. It was a life she couldn't have imagined a day ago, and now it was her only option. Inside, Ming immediately tended to her wound, restitching what had torn loose, his hands gentle despite the urgency. Sandra watched his face as he worked, saw the concentration, the care. This man was supposed to be her enemy. Now he was the only person in the world she could trust. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving my life." Again, Ming didn't look up from his stitching. "We're partners now. That's what partners do." "Is that what we are?" "I don't know what else to call it." He tied off the last stitch, met her eyes. "You saved me back there. When Marcus had me pinned. You didn't hesitate. Neither did you. In Singapore." Sandra reached out, touched the bruise forming on his jaw where he'd been hit. "We're even." Ming's hand came up to cover hers, his fingers warm against her skin. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither could quite say. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the spell. He checked it, and his expression shifted. It started. Marcus's confession is everywhere. News outlets, social media, government channels. The agency is scrambling to contain it, but it's too late. Questions are being asked. Investigations launched. He showed her the screen, headlines scrolling past. "We did it, Sandra. We actually did it." But Sandra was thinking about the ghost files, about the evidence still locked in the agency's secure server. Marcus's confession was damning, but it wasn't everything. They needed the files. Needed the complete picture of corruption to ensure nothing could be buried or explained away. "We're not done," she said. "We still need those files." Ming nodded slowly. "I know, but getting them now, with the agency in crisis mode, full security protocols active, it's exponentially more dangerous. When has that ever stopped you?" His smile was quick, genuine. "Fair point. All right, let's plan an impossible heist." They spent the rest of the night strategizing. The agency headquarters was a fortress, designed to repel exactly this kind of infiltration. But Sandra knew things Ming didn't. She knew about the shift change at 0400 when security was transitioning. Knew about the maintenance access that ran beneath the server room. Knew about the blind spots in camera coverage that hadn't been updated in 3 years because budget cuts had delayed the security upgrade. "We intercept Agent Okonkwo," Sandra said, thinking out loud. "He's my former mentor. Has access to everything. If we can clone his credentials during his morning jog, use them during the shift change, we might have a window." Might isn't exactly reassuring. It's the best we've got. Sandra looked at him. "Unless you have a better idea?" Ming was quiet, fingers drumming against the table. Then he nodded. "It could work, but we'd need perfect timing. One mistake, and we're trapped in the most secure facility in the country with no way out. So we don't make mistakes. You make it sound simple. It is simple, just not easy." Sandra stood, ignoring the pull of fresh stitches. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow morning. 0500 hours. That gives us time to prepare, scout the route, gather equipment." Ming stood as well, moved closer. "Sandra, if we do this, if we actually pull this off, our lives will never be the same. The agency will hunt us forever. We'll always be looking over our shoulders. As opposed to now, when we're perfectly safe and comfortable." Sandra's smile was sharp. "I died yesterday, Ming. Everything after this is borrowed time. I'd rather spend it destroying the people who tried to kill me than hiding in fear." Something shifted in Ming's expression, something warm and fierce. "You're remarkable. You know that. I'm angry. There's a difference." "No. You're both. And it's magnificent." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture unexpectedly tender. "When this is over, when we've burned it all down, what then?" Sandra hadn't let herself think that far ahead. Hadn't allowed herself to imagine a future beyond revenge. But standing here with Ming, his hand still gentle against her face, she found herself wanting things she'd never considered before. Partnership. Understanding. Someone who saw the world's ugliness as clearly as she did and fought against it anyway. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'd like to find out." Ming's smile was soft, vulnerable. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving her space to pull away. But Sandra didn't pull away. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite her injuries. The kiss deepened, becoming something desperate and fierce. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances clinging to something real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ming rested his forehead against hers. For the record, that wasn't part of the plan. Good plans adapt to changing circumstances, Sandra said, making him laugh. They spent what remained of the night preparing for the operation. Ming showed Sandra how to clone credentials, how to bypass biometric scanners, how to move through secure facilities like she belonged there. She was a quick study, her investigator's mind adapting to the hacker's perspective with surprising ease. By the time dawn broke, they were as ready as they'd ever be. Agent Okonkwo jogged the same route every morning, had done so for 15 years. Creature of habit, he'd called it. Sandra had jogged with him dozens of times, early morning strategy sessions disguised as exercise. Now she waited in Freedom Park with Ming, watching the path, heart pounding with anticipation and rage. When Okonkwo appeared, Sandra stepped out of the shadows. His shock at seeing her alive was worth every moment of pain she'd endured. Sandra? But they said you were dead. I know. You gave a lovely eulogy. Her voice was ice. Did you practice it before or after you tried to kill me? Understanding flashed across his face, followed by calculation. His hand moved toward his concealed weapon. Ming appeared behind him, taser pressed to his spine. Don't. They forced him into a waiting van, Ming driving while Sandra kept her weapon trained on the man who'd mentored her, who'd taught her everything about being an agent, who'd betrayed her without hesitation. In the confined space, Okonkwo's composure cracked. You don't understand the pressures, Sandra. The agency, the government, they demanded results. The ghost files, those operations, they were necessary. Necessary? Sandra's voice shook with fury. My sister died because you sold witness protection data. Amara was 26 years old. She had a daughter. She trusted the system to protect her, and you traded her life for money. Okonkwo had the decency to look away. There are always casualties in this work. You know that. She wasn't a casualty. She was my sister. And you murdered her. Sandra wanted to pull the trigger, wanted to end him right there. But she needed him alive. Needed his credentials. Needed him to pay publicly, not die quietly in a van. They cloned his access cards, his biometric data, his security codes. Ming worked with ruthless efficiency while Sandra kept Okonkwo subdued. When they finished, they secured him in a storage unit, alive but unable to warn anyone. Sandra left him with one final message. When this is over, when the ghost files are exposed and everyone knows what you've done, I hope you think of Amara. I hope you see her face every night for the rest of your miserable life. The infiltration was a nightmare of tension. They entered through the maintenance access during shift change, using Okonkwo's credentials to bypass security. Sandra's heart hammered as they moved through corridors she'd walked 1,000 times, past offices where she'd worked, briefing rooms where she'd planned operations. Everything looked the same, but it all felt alien now, corrupted by knowledge she couldn't unknow. Ming moved like a ghost beside her, confident and calm, guiding her through camera-blind spots, timing their movements to avoid patrol patterns. They reached the server room without incident, but Sandra knew the hard part was just beginning. The server room had additional security, biometric scanners that wouldn't be fooled by cloned credentials, guards posted at all hours. There, Ming whispered, pointing to a ventilation shaft. Can you fit through that with your injury? Sandra looked at the narrow opening, thought about her fresh stitches, the pain already radiating through her side. Only one way to find out. It was agony. Every movement pulled at her wound, sent fire shooting through her abdomen. But she gritted her teeth and pushed forward, Ming behind her, both of them crawling through dust and darkness toward the server room. When they finally emerged inside, dropping silently to the floor, Sandra had to pause, breathing hard, tasting copper in her mouth. You're bleeding again, Ming said, checking her bandages. I'll live. Do what you came to do. Ming moved to the servers, connecting his custom hardware, fingers flying across the keyboard. Code cascaded down the screen, encryption breaking, firewalls falling. Sandra kept watch, weapon ready, knowing they had maybe 10 minutes before someone noticed the intrusion. 5 minutes passed. 8. Sandra's nerves were screaming, every second stretching into eternity. Then alarms shrieked through the facility. Red lights flooded the server room. They'd been detected. How long? Sandra shouted over the noise. 30 seconds. The download's almost complete. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Shouts. The door to the server room shook as someone tried to breach it. Sandra braced herself, knowing what came next would determine everything. Done. Ming yanked his equipment free, shoved it into his pack. Now we run. They went back through the ventilation shaft, moving faster now, caution abandoned for speed. Behind them, the server room door exploded inward. Tactical teams poured in. Sandra and Ming dropped into a maintenance corridor, sprinting toward the exit they'd planned. But the exit was blocked. 6 guards, weapons raised. Sandra and Ming skidded to a halt, trapped between 2 forces, nowhere to run. For a moment, Sandra thought this was it. This was how it ended. Shot in the facility where she'd given 8 years of her life. Then Ming grabbed her hand and pulled her sideways, through a door she'd never noticed, into a stairwell that wasn't on any official blueprint. They raced downward 3 floors emerging in a sub-basement that smelled of mold and old concrete. Ming had known about this, had planned for failure. Always 3 steps ahead. They burst out through a service exit into the Lagos dawn, sirens wailing behind them. Ming had a motorcycle waiting, engine already running. Sandra climbed on behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and held on as he accelerated into traffic. They lost the pursuit in the maze of Lagos streets, Ming's driving skillful and reckless in equal measure. By the time they reached another safe house, Sandra was shaking from adrenaline crash, her injury screaming, but they'd made it. They'd actually made it. Inside, Ming immediately began uploading the ghost files to secure servers worldwide. News outlets, Interpol, human rights organizations, whistleblower platforms. Every piece of evidence, every dirty secret, every corrupt operation exposed to the light. Sandra watched the uploads complete, watched her agency's carefully constructed empire begin to crumble in real time. Social media exploded. News channels scrambled to cover the breaking story. Government officials were already being arrested, agency leadership scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. It's done, Ming said quietly. They can't bury this. Can't spin it. The truth is everywhere now. Sandra felt tears on her face, didn't remember starting to cry. Amara, she whispered. This is for you. Ming pulled her close, and she let herself collapse against him, exhausted and wounded and triumphant. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. The next days were a blur. More arrests. Agency heads resigning in disgrace. International investigations launched. The corruption Sandra and Ming had exposed went deeper than anyone had imagined, touched more governments, implicated more officials. It was a scandal that would reshape intelligence operations for decades. But Sandra and Ming were still fugitive. They'd broken into a secure facility, assaulted federal agents, stolen classified information. The fact that they'd exposed massive corruption didn't change the technical illegality of their actions. They were wanted, hunted, with nowhere safe to go. We could disappear, Ming offered one night as they hid in yet another safe house. I have contacts who can create new identities. We could start over somewhere no one would find us. Sandra thought about it. About leaving everything behind, becoming someone else, living in the shadows forever. It was what Ming had done for 5 years. But she wasn't Ming. She'd been an agent, a protector, someone who believed in justice even when the system failed. Or we could turn ourselves in, she said. Ming stared at her. That's insane. They'll lock us up. Maybe. But with every news outlet watching, with the whole world demanding accountability, they can't make us disappear. We testify. We finish what we started. We make sure every corrupt official faces consequences. Sandra took his hand. And then, when it's over, we're free. Actually free. Not hiding, not running. Just living. Ming was quiet for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. Together? Together. Always. They surrendered 3 days later, walking into a police station with the world's media watching. The trial lasted 6 months. Sandra and Ming testified for weeks, providing evidence, naming names, exposing operations. It was brutal, exhausting, cathartic. They watched their former colleagues led away in handcuffs, watched the agency dismantled and rebuilt with oversight, watched justice finally prevail. When they were released, immunity granted in exchange for their cooperation. Sandra stood outside the courthouse with Ming beside her and breathed free air for the first time in months. The sun was warm on her face. The world felt new. What now? Ming asked. Sandra pulled out a business card, something she'd been working on during the trial. David Chung Security Consulting, specializing in exposing corporate and government corruption. I was thinking we could make this official. Partners. Ming took the card, studied it, smiled. Equal partnership? Completely equal. Although I'm better at hand-to-hand combat. And I'm better at hacking. So we're perfectly balanced. Perfectly matched. Ming pulled her close, kissed her softly. I think I can work with that. They walked away from the courthouse together. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Sandra's phone buzzed. Their first client, a whistleblower who needed help exposing pharmaceutical fraud. The work was beginning. Sandra looked at Ming, saw her future reflected in his eyes, and smiled. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. Messier, more complicated, absolutely genuine. They'd torn down corruption together. Now they'd build something honest. Something real. Ready? She asked. With you? Always. And that's their story, family. Sandra David and Ming Chung. The African agent and the Korean hacker who became partners in every sense of the word. They lost everything and found each other. They fought impossible odds and won. They proved that sometimes the people we're taught to fear are just people trying to survive a broken system. And sometimes the greatest love stories start with betrayal and end with redemption. So what did you think? Did the romance feel earned? Was the action intense enough? Could you feel Sandra's rage, Ming's loneliness, their desperate need to expose the truth? Drop a comment below and let me know. Seriously, I read every single one. Tell me what scene hit hardest, what moment made your heart race, whether you'd trust Ming Chung if he showed up to save your life. And listen, if this story grabbed you, if you were glued to your screen for the last 40 minutes, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next thriller because trust me, we're just getting started. I've got more stories coming, more impossible romances, more morally gray characters who'll make you question everything. Share this with someone who loves action thrillers, romance with actual stakes, or just really good storytelling. Help us grow this community. We're building something special here, and I want you part of it. Next video drops soon. Different characters, different stakes, same intensity. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes justice requires breaking all the rules. Peace out, and I'll see you in the next story.